Hello, welcome back to the show. Today we are going to be talking a little bit about God's plans and how maybe you're questioning him, maybe you're questioning your faith, maybe your confidence is like in the tank right now and you're like, how am I supposed to get through this? Okay, so that's where we're at today. And a little bit last week we talked about pivoting, so this kind of feeds off of that. If you haven't checked out that episode, make sure you go back and listen. But today I want to talk about when we step into our faith, right? One of the first verses that maybe we memorize is Jeremiah 29:11. And if you don't know what this is, it's for I know the plans I have for you. This is the Lord's declaration, plan for your well-being, not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. Okay. So when you read that and you start to become a Christian and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing in the world. Like, God's got my back. He's not going to give me anything I can't handle. And that's kind of out of context. And what I mean by that, God does have plans for us, right? His future for us, He is going to make sure we prosper. He's going to make sure that it gives us hope and love and joy. Like that is His ultimate goal for us. But just because that's His ultimate goal doesn't mean our life isn't full of ups and downs, right? And I just want to kind of talk about failure a little bit here today because so many times we think that failure is this way that we're going to just have, I don't know, we're going to have complete and utter non-control. So we're not going to have control. And we think that whenever we're failing, that it's going to just be our story. Like that's it. There's no way anything good can come from this. Maybe it is your marriage falling apart. Maybe it is something terrible that happened to one of your children or something terrible that they did, or maybe it was yourself, right? Maybe you went back to alcohol or drugs, or maybe you or somebody who did something that you're not proud of. Or maybe like me, you almost lost yourself to your mental health. And we can look at that and make it our story, right? I'm always going to be anxious. I'm always going to be the woman who's walked all over. I'm always going to be the drug addict. I'm always going to be this person who nobody trusts. I'm always going to be the person who failed at multiple businesses. I'm always going to be the woman that went through 3 divorces, right? We look at these things and they tell our story for us. And if we constantly are just looking at that and not at what happened because of that, we are going to stay stuck. Our confidence is going to be trash. And we're going to let it stay. We're going to let us stay stuck and small for the rest of our lives, right? That's not our story. Yes, my mental health tanked. And if you don't know my story, I'll share just a little bit of it here. Whenever I was postpartum for the first time, so a little over 6 years ago, with my first kiddo, I completely lost it to my mental health. I was doing all the things I did best, pretending that life was great and I could figure it out. That's who I am, a type A, firstborn. And I was just like, I got this, like it doesn't matter that I'm not sleeping. It doesn't matter that I'm crying for no reason. It doesn't matter that I don't want to be around my baby sometimes. It doesn't matter that my husband and I haven't had a conversation in weeks. It doesn't matter that I'm, staying up and doing all these things. I'm nursing and doing the bottles and I'm trying to keep the house clean. And then I'm going back to work 6 weeks after I have a baby. I got this. I can keep it together. And the truth was, I wasn't keeping it together. Every single night, I would cry myself to sleep, the little bit of sleep that I got. And it was just one of those things that I was like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I want. And I have always had anxiety. I've always had a bit of depression. I always had not believed in myself. And up until that point, I could handle it. Like, and I'm going to use air quotes here if you're if you're listening to the audio, you can't see me, but I could always handle it. I had coping mechanisms that were not great. I would use alcohol to numb. I would use food to try to fill a void that I I didn't know why, why it was there. I would work in these codependent states where if things weren't going great, I was able to use my mental health as almost like a victim state. And I want you to take this very lightly because I recognize mental health is a huge thing. But I also want you to maybe see if this is your side of it, because this was my truth. My mental health was trash, 100%. But I was choosing alcohol, which was making my anxiety worse. I was choosing to put myself in these situations that I knew were not good, because if I did that, right, this is where the control comes in. If I did that, somebody would come save me. The trouble I was having in my relationship would be shifted because he did love me and he was going to come back and show up for me. So I would self-sabotage in this way, which is what I was controlling, to make my mental health worse. So therefore I could control the situation, right? Like codependency, manipulation, all the things. And we'll maybe talk about that in another episode. But my point to this is we were stuck in this cycle for so long, and I would always just get through it. Like it was essentially like a band-aid as I was doing those things, as I was avoiding and, choosing alcohol and all the things. It was a band-aid to cover up the real issue. And the real issue was I didn't believe in myself. I didn't have confidence in myself and who God said I was. I believed I wasn't worth anything. I believed I was trash. I believed that I would never ever result to anything because that's that's what society told me. That's what school told me. Like if you're nice, people walk all over you. If you're mean, nobody talks to you. If you're the popular girl, then, then maybe everything works. And so I would try to go in that route, and that backfired completely because then I turned into somebody I didn't want to be. And it was just like this ever going spiral. And so as I, became postpartum, I completely lost it. Everything I had done before, I either couldn't do or was no longer working. And I just remember thinking like, this is not what I'm signing up for. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing. And I sat and rocked my newborn one night. He had colic, so he screamed all of the time. And I was like, I don't want this. I don't want to be a mom. I don't want to be here. I don't want any of this. I don't care what happens. Like I was setting up a plan to get rid of me and the baby. Like next day we're driving, ditch, whatever it needed to be. It was happening because I was done. I could no longer control it. I had too much on my plate. I could not handle it alone, right? And so when we read Jeremiah 29:11, we see like all these plans to prosper and hope and like all this goodness, right? Do I think that that fits with that verse in the Bible? Absolutely not, right? Like why would God put me in that situation? Why would he give me this experience that almost resulted in me ending my life and my baby's life? How is any of that hopeful? How is any of that making me prosper? Right. And if I sit there and look at the guilt and the shame of how I acted and behaved in that situation, I would not be where I am today. Because the truth is, God created that. One, I believe, for my purpose is to help other women get out of that, to be able to help them speak up with their confidence and help them build stronger, healthy relationships and find healthy coping mechanisms to get to the place that God created them to be, right? I believe that is 100% my purpose, is what God wants me to do. But also, I would not have been able to learn what I needed to learn to get myself healthy again. I would not have been able to build the family, the home that I wanted to be. And I know like there's a lot of things that go into this, and I'm not going to share everything here today. Maybe one day in the future we'll talk more about relationships because it is on my heart. But we had a really hard year in 2024, my family and I. Um, there were things that I did not understand. There were things that I was like, why is this happening? Like, there's no reason this should be happening. I'm doing all the things right. And it was because I needed to have these experiences to grow through them. And also because I was carrying it all. I was carrying it all myself. And so many times we hear this quote like, God will never give you anything that you can't handle, right? Like, He'll never put more on your plate than you can handle, that you can carry. And I think that's kind of crap. God 100% will put things on your plate that you cannot carry, especially if you are somebody like me who loves control and loves to do it all and you like try to figure out everything yourself. He will most definitely put things on your plate that you cannot carry alone because you need him and he needs that. He wants to remind you that you need him. And if he was just letting your life go all peachy king, he is not needed essentially, right? And yes, we should praise during our blessings, but we also need him. We need his grace. We need his mercy. And if we're doing it all by ourselves, there's absolutely no way that he's in there, right? It's like we are trying to pretend that we're God, and we're not. We're absolutely not. So I think that's the reason sometimes behind some of these failures. And if we think about it as kids too, how many times have our kids failed miserably, right? From the day they come out of the womb and they're trying to latch on and like your milk's going everywhere, like, oh, failure. But they try it again and you try it again. And you go on to tummy time and crawling and they fall over. And when they walk, how many times do they take a step and fall over? If they were to look at that failure as babies or even as adults, as we were looking at that failure, right? Like, ugh, why are you even trying? Why even bother? You just keep failing, right? But they have resilience. They keep going and going and going because that's what's making them learn to balance. Every single failure they have helps them learn to grow, to become the person that they're meant to be. And of course, right, we would think that's absolutely insane if someone were to tell their little 1 year old like, oh, just stop trying to walk. You're never going to become anything. Like, you suck. We would think that's absolutely ridiculous. Yet we do that every single day as adults when we mess up at something, whether it's in our job, whether we snapped at our kids, whether we had a bad experience with our partner, like we got in a fight, right? We look at those little moments and we let it determine the story of our lives. And that's insane. Why would we do that? Because it's easy to zoom in on the problem. It's easy to take it personally. It's easy to interpret it like, of course I suck. Like, it's easier to find a reason to sabotage yourself and to blame yourself than it is to actually work through it and grow through it. And I think that's why God sometimes gives us these things that we're like, there's no way. Like, why is this happening? I can't do it because he wants us to lean on him. Jeremiah 29:11 is truth. It is the truth that he has plans for us to prosper. But if you take that out of context and you forget that he exiled the Israelites for 70 years, like it does look like, oh, well, it's if you're a Christian, it's supposed to be easy. If you believe in God, if you're not sinning, right? If you're this perfect Christian, then your life's going to be easy. No, he exiled everyone, everyone for 70 years, not just the people who didn't believe, not just the people who were idolizing false gods. He exiled everyone because they needed to learn to trust in him, to be able to look at him and have him guide them. Okay? So don't take the Bible out of context. Lesson one of the day. But to just remember that you have the power every single day to be able to shift your mindset and go back to the truth of who God is, who He's creating you to be. If you're leaning on Him, if you are praying, if you are speaking truth into your mind about why he wants you to prosper, what good he wants for you, right? You are going to be taking those moments of failure, those moments of self-doubt, those moments of negative self-talk. You're going to be able to shift them to the truth that he's got your back, that you need him, that during times of struggle, he is where we should go first. Okay? I hope this episode brought life into you. I hope that you were able to see that sometimes our failures are the absolute best thing that can happen to us because it gives us that connection with God again. But until next time, I will talk to you soon. I hope you have the best week and I'll see you then.